writing the chapter 3, it always depends on what kind of instrument you have. Okay? Nakabase sa instrument kung papaano, kung ilan yung numbers of tables na meron kayo. Okay? Sa chapter 4 naman, anak, ganun din. Okay? Meron tayong kailangan i-consider upon writing your chapter 4. And also, class, on the chapter 3, you need to go back with your RL and RS for you to write the interpretation. Nagkakaintindihan. So, class, sa findings naman mga anak, okay, sa chapter 4 rather, okay, ituturo ko naman sa inyo the appropriate ways on how to write a summary of findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Kasi mga anak, issue ko to palagi. Kapag tinanong ko yung estudyante, sige nga, how are you going to differ findings from conclusion? Ma'am, di ba parang parehas lang? No, they are not. Lalong-lalo na sa structure, magkaiba sila. At yung class ang i-disclose natin today. Okay? So, class, when we say chapter 4 class, ito yung kailangan nyo ngayong balikan. Ma'am, grabe, seryoso. Yes, lahat class ng ginawa ninyo sa chapter 1 and then sa chapter 2, babalikan nyo kay chapter 4. And even on the chapter 3 as well. So class, so number 1, you'll be needing to revisit your SOP plus your hypothesis. And then you need to summarize your chapter 3. And then, kailangan natin ng closure. Plus, you're conducting a research kasi may nakita kayong problem. So, kailangan yung tapusin yung study ninyo by deriving solution. Kailangan ng closure. Okay? Alright. So, class, let's deal with the summary of findings. On the summary of findings, class, number 1, you need to reiterate your research method, the sample size, research locale, and the statistical treatment. And then you also need to revisit your SOP, specifically the main problem and the sub-problems. And then lastly, you need to identify if your null hypothesis is subject for rejection or not. Okay, let's have an example here, class. Alright, step 1, identify the research method being used on this example. Identify the research method on this sample. Sige naman, pagod na kami magbasa. Tignan nyo lang muna. Yes, Adrian?
Ano po, yung research method po nila is yung descriptive survey po.
Yes, very good. Simple as that. So class, now how about the research locale? Class, when we say research locale, it is where your respondents came from. Kung saan kayo kumuha ng participants or respondents or kung saan kinandak yung study. So now, identify the research locale of this study. Yes, Elaine?
Ano po, ma'am? Students in one of the public schools in Kalumpit, Bulacan po.
Very good. Next, si Joel, nakita ko siya. Joel, what's the sample size or the population of the sample paragraph? The sample size or the population?
193.
Yes. Okay. How about the statistical tool used, okay, for their data? Anong ginamit? Statistical tool or treatment? Ma'am, sandali, nagbabasa kami yan. Readathon ba ito, ma'am, kang pabilisan magbasa? Sana ganun din kabilis yung nagre-record ng recitation. No? Na-pressure ba? Yung stat. So, isa sa mga ginamit is the McCall-Krabs test. Ma'am, kasi ang hirap bigkasin. Parang tongue twister ba siya? Okay, thank you so much for that. STEM 1. So, next class is this one. You need to revisit your SOP Wala kayong choice, anak. Yun kasi summary of findings, kailangan sagutin yung statement of the problem ninyo. Okay. Makaka-relate ulit dito yung group nila Lauren plus yung group din nila Hershey kasi dalawa yung set of respondents nyo, di ba? Kaya medyo mahaba-haba si SOP. Yes, nak, kailangan bigyan nyo ng sagot. So class, on this note, the sub-problem 1.1, which is part of the problem 1, seeking for the gender, and then for the age, and then for the 2.1, ano na to we're dealing na with the independent variable na to Okay, yung social media owned, okay, by your respondents. And then 2.2, number of hours they spend upon using their social media accounts. And then the number of their purpose upon utilizing it. And then class for the 3.1 is for the dependent variable, okay, about their reading habits, something like that. And then class for the problem number 4, ito na class, yung babalikan nyo naman si hypothesis you have on your chapter 1 to determine if si null hypothesis ba ay rejected or hindi. That is for the summary of the findings. So class, how about the conclusion? So class, no, this is the number 1 rule. You cannot conclude without any findings. This is one of the differences of being a researcher and a chismosa lang naman. Okay? Kasi class, if you're a researcher, hindi ka maniniwala sa sabi-sabi without determining or checking first the findings. Class, sa atin na natin itigil yung fake news sa generation ninyo. Huwag masyadong maapektuhan or ma-move maniwala sa mga nakikita lang. Always be skeptical. Bakit merong ganito? Huwag masyadong magpaniwala, ha? Okay, then again, class, do not conclude without any findings. Class, no? In writing the conclusion, class, yes, just like the summary of findings, i-restate ninyo or babalikan ninyo ulit si statement of the problem but in a synthesized manner. Okay, in a very shortcut way, concise way. And then class, you'll be also disclosing the potential contribution of your study, okay, in the body of knowledge by avoiding, okay, too much data or figures or even numbers. Because class, sa conclusion part, kailangan kahit non-researchers ka, kaya mong maintindihan yung naging result ng study. So class, meron ganitong argument If you really understand the lesson, if you really understand the findings of your study, therefore, it's so easy for you to explain it in a simple manner. Diba? Para kayong nagre-report dito, class. Kung talagang naiintindihan mo yung dinidiscuss mo, kailangan mo siyang maipaliwanag sa madaling paraan. That's the essence of the conclusion. Okay? Kaya wag na wag mo sasabihin sa akin na, ma'am, parehas lang naman si findings sa conclusion. No. Sa structure pa lang, anak, magkaiba na sila. Let's have the example here. So, class, no? Itong conclusion na to, class, based on the findings of the study. You revisited your statement of the problem. That is the number 1 rule. Pero this time, class, we avoided to input so baka nga wala kayong makikitang figures or numbers dyan Kasi hindi na natin siya kailangan. Okay ba? Iko-conclude ka na dito na bakit ganun yung naging result of the findings. Okay? Wala na kayong makikitang mga highfalutin words, technical words in class. Kaya ako class, kapag bigyan ko lang kayo ng idea paano ako magsulat ng conclusion, I'll make sure na meron akong 5 readers. Expert, okay, and then yung matatanda pero hindi ganun kataas yung educational attainment nila. And then bata, and then yung ka-age level ko. Yun, kasi gusto kong makita kung naiintindihan ba nila yung naging conclusion ng study ko. Kung sa level ba nila, kaya nilang maunawaan, mag-grasp kung ano yung naging findings of my study. That's one of my techniques. Okay, in writing the conclusion. Next class, the recommendation. So class, no, if sa summary of if the chapter 3 depends on what instrument you have, okay, class with the related literature and studies you have, and then class for the summary of findings, babalikan si SOP, si research method, sample size, research locale, and even your hypothesis. And doon naman sa conclusion ninyo, babalikan si SOP, and then i-converge sasagutin nyo in a very concise way based on the findings of the study. Haba, no? Sa recommendations naman, class, babalikan nyo lang is your significance of the study. So, based on on your conclusion, on your summary of findings, how are you going to recommend the result? Okay, with your beneficiaries. So, class, no, let's have an example here. Isa sa mga enlisted enumerated on their results, the school administrators, parents, plus the children here, and then the lawmakers, and then we're done with the discussion of the chapter 4.